Week in hospitality marketing. I'm your host, Lauren Gray. And yes, as you can tell by the backdrop, we are back in the United States from our European gallivanting for these past few months. Last week, Paris. Now we're finally home. Could have, should have gone into the office. Just felt like, you know what? This is a little bit nicer looking background at the moment compared to the disarray of our office. So thought we'd just travel and channel for a year. But anyways, thank you so much for always following us along in our adventures, as well as our topics and conversations, and for everyone joining us live globally, regardless of your time zone, which I'm intimately still familiar with and coping with. Um, Thank you so much for catching us live, and of course, for everyone that watches us on our restreams on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and all the channels and platforms for that, all of our relationships with associations and corporations and so forth, simulcast with us on. Thank you so very much. Also watching live on hospitalitychannel.tv and our TV station, our Hospitality Channel TV, which is an app you can get on Apple or on Google Play, and also on your TV, your smart TV, which is also for Google, Amazon, Apple, Roku, all the platforms. Just look for the Hospitality Channel, and you will find our channel, in which the show is always on the free side of the gateway. So anyway, thank you so much for all of that. Diving into things, been wanting to chew at this conversation a lot more, especially we've touched on it a few times these past few weeks as we've been traveling. We've kept it very specific to a certain angle of it, but we want to really talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and that is AI and its influence on SEO, organic search results, and discovery of our products and our brands and our properties and everything else that we are trying to point things to, and how dominant it is. So our topic today is pretty straightforward and simple, but it has a lot of connotations as to what does this actually mean, is searching versus solving. And that's really what we're talking about as a change in how things have been. You would have to not be looking for things online. You'd have to not be online, which none of you are, because you would be watching the show if you didn't, in fact, be very cognizant of what's online. That everything AI, generative long language models and so forth, has been put front and center on top. Google, obviously, with their conference we discussed a little bit about a couple of weeks back and so forth, has just made it the dominant force. And when you go to a search page, you have your AI, Gemini, interpretation of what you asked about. Then below it, you have the things that we were always working and battling with, which is what I call Google Zero, but it's the answer box, as to being able to give you information related specifically and variations of your questions or purposes of your questions, and letting you select and choose from those as well. And those dominate your real estate. And then you have to roll up, and then you begin to see the paid placement, which we all are fighting and struggling for in the same perennial top 5 categorizations. And then somewhere, if you keep on going, you'll find the organic links, which, as you know, usually are tied and tethered to the AI results on the top. So more and more people are just getting that far. If they're using the SERP rather than talking, rather than engaging with the app platforms that everybody is pushing out, Meta has theirs, which whole other story on my glasses, the smart glasses I was using and using Meta with them and so forth. Gemini, Copilot for Microsoft and Bing, all of which is ChatGPT, all of those things. Notice I don't mention Apple, Siri, still way lagging behind on all that. And the only variation to that is the Siri says, can I talk to ChatGPT? So we're going to ignore that one for right now. Any which way, everyone's beginning to rely on what the answer comes up to, because a lot of times our questions are general enough that a SERP result AI listing is sufficient. So AI is beginning to influence a larger and larger portion of how people discover us. Right now, I can say firsthand from my client relationships and so forth, it's around a third. Conservatively, it's at least a quarter of what you're getting. And in most circumstances, I would say it's even higher, and it's only going to continue to grow. It reminds me, reminiscently, being in this industry for so long as I've been, that it's very much about back in the day when digital marketing first started invading traditional marketing back in the early 2000s, where it was a 3% contribution, a 4% contribution, a 5, a 7, then jumped to 11%. It's just kept growing, growing, growing. I see AI's influence on discovery in search results, SEO conversations, as becoming more and more dominant. How far it'll go, will it truly totally ever replace that? You know what? That's great over a beer to discuss the implications of long-term of that. We have long ago put nails in coffins for so many industries because of what the influence of what all these things are going to be, like travel agents and PR companies and so forth. And yet, here we are, and both are thriving. So what we think we know at the time that we're commenting about it doesn't always come to the fruition of what it ends up being. AI has its variations and creations and usabilities and limitations, and also its deterrence, where you're looking more for information and so forth. So it goes to the title that we're talking about of searching versus solving, because if you're looking without a need for a specific solution, you're looking to expand and understand, and you don't quite know the direction that your final query will be, you search for data. You look at related conversations, related content, and maybe that influences what you're then looking to continue on in your discovery. But so much of what we use search engine result or search engine pages for, search in general, is the solving process. I have a need and I'm looking for a solution. I have a question and I want an answer. And AI, that is their purpose-driven aspect of this. As a matter of fact, there's a great chart, and we'll share it in the show notes for later on for everyone, describing and breaking down the searching versus solving dimensions. So to make it simple, comparisons of the dimension of what is being used for discovery and its comparison against searching versus solving. For instance, customer intent. I'm looking for a hotel. Okay. Search results have you finding that information. Here is based on what you're asking about. I'm looking for a hotel downtown XYZ or whatever. Here's the results I can share with you, ranked according to the authority that I've given them. This is the search engine talking, and relevance to what you're asking specifically for. AI is here's a hotel that is answering to what you asked about, which also expands upon how you asked the question. I'm looking for a hotel that's nearby this restaurant or this venue or this event that is less than this, that has these amenities, that because you just talk, you just like, okay, this is what I'm wanting it to know, to ask. And it will give you, based on the question and query that you ask, an answer. Okay, here's this. Now we have had AI which say, well, there's a variety, such as you can have anything from X down to Y. That's the platform is trying to make sure they don't cut their nose off to spite their face, to say that they're giving an answer and they're giving a concise way of what you are asking for, but they're giving latitude to be able to shift what the final answer would be, kind of a spectrum answer, so to speak. So you have consumer intent. Search gives you finding information. Solving is the resolving the question. It wants to get a solution for you. It wants to give you an answer to your question. For us, brand priority, that's our purpose, okay, is search is to appear in the results. If we want to be a part of the solving AI, we want to be a part of the solution. We want to be a part of the answer. There's the difference of being represented and being the solution. Very different perspective as to our purpose of this. Content strategy. That's the dimension. This is what we're wanting to have a good content strategy. For search, it's about keywords and volume of traffic generated by the keyword combinations and the intent of the search, providing the information. In the solving column, content strategy is structured, utility, and truth. You need to have your content and the strategy to create it in a way that it is very specific to what you are. And it's substantiated not just by what you say about yourself, but how other things correlate that same answer, collaborate that same answer. How's that? That's a better word. When you're looking at success metrics, okay, in search, it's the amount of clicks and traffic generated. Okay. In solving, which is the AI equation of this, it's about trust and problem resolution. It's about the confidence factor of what you said as the contributor to the answer that AI generated and how accurate that is and how much it solved the query or the question that prompted it. Okay, problem resolution. It's the answer to what they were inquiring about. Okay. And we'll get back to the trust conversation about that a little bit as well, because there's a whole Pandora's box about that. Then you have risk level as to the dimensions. What's the risk? Okay. In search, it's always the competition for attention. You're in a group response. You're one of many things that comes back to the query on a search engine. You're on your rankings of your organic placement, your paid spend and your ads, your ability to be a resource for the answer box, and most importantly, a part of the AI answer on the very top. In the pure AI world, it's passing the algorithmic judgment. being able to go through all of the hoops that AI and the property and the platforms are all different into how they prioritize, how they gather these things for these decisions, going through all the hoops of the algorithmic function that long language model has to be the end solution. So there you have it. If you categorize things by dimension as to what you're trying to do and how it relates to search versus solution, which is AI, and you go through customer intent, brand priority, content strategy, success metrics, risk levels, you have different strategies for both. Right now, you have to live in both worlds. As I said, if you're at the very least, 25% of your traffic is being generated organically versus AI solution, long language model solutions, GEO, which is an acronym still not totally settled on yet. There's a lot of variations to it, the AIO, the AEO, the LLMO. Everybody's trying to search for the one that's going to hook and stay. Matter of fact, my dear friend Tim Welsh, tossed out a survey because we were going back and forth about it on LinkedIn. You should look him up, Tim Welsh, on LinkedIn, and tell me what you guys do. You use GEO? For me, I don't like GEO so much because I say geo because of location-based functions and targeting, geo targeting, geometrics, just. I would hate to say we're going to use it now for AI and then have to go back to say geographic targeting is like, okay, it's kind of already being used in my mind. So AIO is a much nicer one, but I see GEO out there a lot. LMMO, too hard, too many letters. Sometimes it requires constant explaining, long language model optimization compared to AIO, artificial intelligence optimization. There's AEO, artificial engine optimization. It's not an engine. So I think that's a misnomer. One that's just too asimilar to SEO, and they're trying to make it too similar to that function to it. So I'm sticking with the AIO as my favorite, but we'll see how the population of it lands to that. I've been wrong before. Love Betamax versus VHF, so I have a history of sometimes not being right on those ones. So now looking at the idea of how these compare to each other, what is it you have to worry about? And we're going to get now into the trust level conversation I mentioned about before, because the trust level function of this is really fundamental to this. AI doesn't look at your site the same way. Long language models. AI is just a short version of that. Long language models don't look at your site in the same persistent way that search engine does. There's no indexing, there's no categorization classifications. There are things that it's looking for. And a lot of it is for it to be similar to what it has found about you in other places. Well, here's the problem, and I don't know whether this is a term that's relatively new to your vernacular or something that you are constantly dealing with, depending upon your engagement with AI and AI development, but there's what's called hallucination, a hallucination factor. AI's full intent, as mentioned, is to solve and answer your question, is to get back to you with a specific value to what you were inquiring about. And a lot of the things you've seen in the media as this has been progressing since the beginning of the end of 23 through 24, now into 25, is that a lot of times there's this authenticity and truth factor. We've discussed it on the show many, many times that there is an accuracy issue that AI will come up and make up what it needs to get you the answer you're asking for. And it's not necessarily accurate or truthful at all. Well, out of that process has come functions, which I find fascinating, is where you can actually put into the process of the AI's ability to respond what's called a hallucination factor, which is once it comes up with what it thinks is the answer, it actually self-checks itself and says, can I actually do what I'm about to tell them is the answer? And if it can't do what it is, go to a link that doesn't exist because they made up the link, or go to an article that they made up because there is no article, then it self-checks itself not to use the answer it was going to give you and reevaluate what answer it can give you that follows that criteria. It isn't a fail-safe that is 100%. There's, self-checking your test, so to speak, before you turn it in. Yeah, this is all the answers I wanted to give, even though the answer still isn't right. You've convinced yourself for what you have known that this is the right answer. But there may be more information that would show, and truly would, that wasn't the right answer. So it's not a foolproof system to say that now AI is always going to be truthful or accurate. Absolutely not. And not everything operates in this spectrum. So there is that factor. So in this world of accuracy of AI, it's trying to balance out itself as to saying, okay, How can I confirm that what I found, what you're telling me, what I've discovered on your site is in fact what you are, compared to other options of pulling resources to make the answer I need? And so it does this comparativeness as to looking at other sources to validate that they're saying what you're saying about yourself. You are a hotel, you are in hotel this location, you do have these amenities, so forth, so that if it seems to be the closest value to what it needs to give you, the user, the answer, it feels good that it's accurate, and then it's going to come back with referring to you because the signals, the trust signals that it has around you, do the same thing. Okay, so there's some categories. There's basically five things that it kind of really focuses in on a lot. Um, One is the truth to the trust signaling. Obviously, is the verifiable credentials of other places. Not going to get into too much detail about that yet, but we will in future tense. Anticipatory utility. You don't. It's about. It's not going to go unless you ask it to go, or the platform is based on deep thought, deep research, so forth. Um, it's going to give you, it looks enough until it has enough and then comes back to generate the answer. Other long language models look enough to get an answer and then look deeper to confirm the answer's authenticity, accuracy, truth, and everything else before coming back. There's different ways that these models work. Okay, so anticipatory utility is how uh, detailed of an answer is needed for the user's query. Obviously, if you're talking about a deep research link thing, da 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 da, da, then it's going to require repetitive depth and clarification of what you're asking for, perhaps, before it gives you what would be a satisfactory answer. Asking about hotels in an area that they're close to, that's a very in, got enough, come back kind of way. Second item, factual consistency. Maintaining a coherent fact pattern across all the touch points. This goes a little bit towards the truth signaling. Not only is what you're saying about yourself, what other people say about you, or they can be verified is similar to what's being said about you, but there's also a consistency to that. There's not a variation that you say 1 minute you have a 50-room hotel and the next a 500-room hotel. There's an inconsistency pattern which creates an uncertainty to this process. That maybe the information about this is not completely accurate, and it degrades that value of information in lieu of a competitor, perhaps, that has more consistent information. You may have been more relevant to the answer, but because of the lack of consistency, you get diminished in your value relationship compared to a competitor, and your competitor is used in that solution answer. Okay. There is a solution architecture, structured content to directly address consumers' problems. This is a fundamental shift in how you've been doing what you've been doing. So it's a constant mouse wheel, okay, of doing something and doing it differently and still having to do the same thing but differently over and over and over. First, we had to, back in the day, we wanted to write stuff that people were interested in reading. Then we found out that search engines were really looking for, things like word consistency, blah blah blah, how many times the word we use, so forth. So we get into the keyword stuffing world of things like, oh, I'll just use the word over and over and over, and then the search engine will think that I'm more relevant to that word because I use it more often, and it's going to rank me higher. And it did until it got fixed, and on and on and on. So right now we wrote content for the reader, then we wrote content for the engines, then we were told that we have to write good content that does both. So you have to be good about keeping user engagement, but you have to be depthful enough that you're giving rich content to the engines to add more depth of value of the content you're writing. So we had short form content that was usually for the reader, that was enjoyable to read, got to the point, gave you the information that was necessary without having to read pages and reams of blogs or sheets of text. And then the sheets of text and the long blogs and long form stuff was then put in so that there was more depth to the variety of the content that we had, so we could put up authenticity about other things than just the primary things. Now we're to the world of how you write to the user is what the value is for an AI. Talking about and addressing what usually is prompt-based interest, because that's what we're dealing with. If you're not typing it, you're talking it. And usually it's a query that is user-based that has to get answered. I need a hotel near downtown XYZ venue that has ADA access with ramps. Well, obviously, factually, if you have references everywhere, there's a basic ADA compliance that everybody has, but not everybody's equal in what the compliance, how they fill that compliance. Some are more robust than others and preferred and so forth, and others are just minimalist and challenging. Um, if you refer to a lot of how you have installed ramps, if you refer to how your ramps are benefited, and people reviews say how nice it is for needing those ramps, and I'm speaking about physical handicap ability for people at this point, just picking one out of a hat, then that reference of what you're talking about, okay, consumer problem, means that in relationship to the scope of the queries related to that, you have a better value than somebody that doesn't do that. So that solution architecture is very critical about how you address consumer problems in the context of the content you provide. It doesn't mean you put it front and center that you need to banner ad it or H1 it or anything like that on your site for it, unless you feel that this is a huge thing that you really want to push and that you really want to drive to that demographic. But in general, it has to be of high enough relevance and quality and how you present it for AI to acknowledge that this is a value proposition. Should it be involved in a prompt that they're creating a solution for, that you would do well for them, that they're presenting you with it, and it matches the other content that's been said about you, it matches the content you say about yourself. There's persistency with this, there's consistent engagement with it. That gives you the value proposition. Then you have a thing called trust signaling. Okay, build verifiable credentials that the algorithms can detect. Trust signaling is, for lack of a better SEO term, backlinking. It's not the only thing, but it is a key thing. How you are connected to other authoritative places about what you are, who you are, NAP information basically, and then you go from there for amenity based and so forth, destination based. It arches out in the sense of what you are connected, in the sense of the credentials. Obviously, secured sites are a must. Everything. So, I mean, if you don't have an SSL, you're just not going to be seen. Um, Engines don't even pull for those anymore. You need these credentials. You need this consistency. Obviously, too, and this goes into a soft zone of hey, you can do this for yourself because it does have impact on it. Having recognitions and authoritative connections, awards, so to speak, brand connections. This is where it helps brand hotels, and having those connections to what you are add to your trust signaling. Because if you are saying that you're a Marriott and you're connected to the Marriott system and your booking engine is Marriott and your content's Marriott and what have you, it's going to add that value of trust to what it sees as a larger entity than you. And that benefits your being able to come up. Matter of fact, brands have a bit of an edge when it comes to this trust signaling in their markets because of that relationship with a larger entity that is more established in the authenticity department. So, the 5 points we talked about: anticipatory utility, factual consistency, solution architecture, trust signaling, and measurement resets. Measurement resets, in fact, just not what you appear, but how you assisted. Sorry, didn't just realized I didn't tell you the fifth one until now. Measurement reset is unlike search, where you're looking to see how you showed up. Not everybody's always number one. Not everybody's number in the top five, number and always in the top 10 or the 15, 20. Sometimes you're in the top 100-ish of something because you have to be so diverse in what you show up for. Even being in there gives you a value relevance for what you showed up for in the 100th position. Um, you need to see how it helped, because this goes back to an old school conversation. Used to be when you in your website where you would put a things to do list, and it was just a kind of like a shopping cart pile. You piled everything in. It was a catch all. Okay, anything that had any relevance to your destination or value of what you were got put on this list of, well, right next door to the tiki bar that's famous for its burger. We're right next to the beach. We're right next to the event venue. We're right next to the shopping. Whatever it is, event wise things. Don't miss the underwater basket weaving that's in behind us in the pool or whatever. That all got put into a hodgepodge, and then we saw traffic on our analytics and said, hey, the things to do page is being used. And the old school of it was, what was driving that query? What was the search query when we could still look at keywords? What was the words they were looking for? Oh, look, it's the Tulip Festival. Well, that was one of the events in our to-do list. So that prompted us to say, maybe consider that was driving traffic to our page. We build a page out for the Tulip Festival and then expand the content so we show up more authoritative for what we're talking about it for, and use it and market with it, okay, point towards it, use it in our social media platforms and so forth, and really amp up that traffic, which is literally verbatim what we have done with that example for property in Ottawa years ago. And now they've been persistently the authority for that for a long time because they were the first to actually exploit that content and become the authority for people go to their hotel website about the event compared to the event's website itself. That's how strong it was when it comes into that. So the same lesson learned from that kind of process is the same thing you need to do now. You need to see how you were used. Now, that means that you have to monitor how AI is using you. And it's funny, big entities in our industry, I won't name names, they begin with a C, they begin with a G, they begin with a whatever. Um, they don't tell their clients they have no working tool to do this with. And yet, if you go online and actually spend any 5 minutes, you'll find a dozen top tools, and then there's those that trickle below it. They're not cheap. It costs money to monitor, and it costs money per language model platform that you want to monitor. And it requires a lot of legwork to build up what it is that you're trying to discover. I'm not going to tell that secret sauce away at this point. That's internal discussion with our hospitality marketing club right now is building these kind of things with these kind of tools so we have some sense of what AI is doing with our site. But let me be the first to tell you, if you haven't heard it yet, there is the means to do this. It's funny, sidebar for a second. So obviously last week was the High Tech and HSMAI's commercial strategy conference and so forth. And I've been catching up and getting debriefed on all the people that I know that went to it and so forth. And I really feel like I missed a great event, which I know I did, but I was in Paris for that week anyway. And they said AI was in every freaking conversation. But I asked them two questions. I said, one, did they tell you how to track AI's usage of your content? No, nobody did. Did they even say it was possible? Not many people did, and they didn't even refer to it in that context. Okay. Second, did they tell you how you could influence AI and begin to augment what you're doing so that you show up better for a solution? No, they just it was like watching the way that they talked. It was about the impact on our industry and we have to prepare for it in the future and it's a part of our life now and blah blah blah. Which is all really just like sitting back and watching a train wreck. You know what's going to happen. You know what's happening, but you're not offering any advice of how to have avoided it or what to do after it. There was just buzzwords. It sounds like a lot of the AI conversation was buzzword dialogue. Sad to say, wasn't there. So if you were there and you disagree with me that people were giving you solutions and answers and insights that were helpful and actionable, please knock me off my perch. Send me an email as always, Lauren at Hospitality Digital Marketing, and tell me, nope, this was from this presentation and this is what they said, and I'm taking it to the bank and this is what I'm working with. I would love to know that I'm wrong about this because this is the frustration point for me when it comes to conferences. People latch on to key, buzzwords and they incorporate in their conversation as some way of attracting attention to themselves, but they don't give any substance to what they're talking about. They're only referring to it so that you pay attention to what they're saying, thinking that they're going to give you a solution. Annoys me that's when I always used to sit in the front row and raise my hand. If I wasn't on stage presenting, I was in the front row asking. I hope there was people that replaced me for those worlds. But anyways, so those are the 5 processes that go along with being able to answer your brand value to how AI is working. And it is going into your SEO and it is working with your discovery value and it is expanding in its value proposition to you and displacing and shifting the monopoly of what SEO's functionality was like. Before, there was nothing to challenge SEO. There was literally, if you're going to do organic, you have to pander to the search engines because that's how people discover you. Yes, you can put a QR code on a billboard and they can scan it and still go to your website, but at least they can find you if they're driving by your exit. Or put it on TV and still they have to go to your website so you can get what you need to find them on, whether it's on a map or whether it's something. If it's not a building you're staring at, the internet has something to do with it. And if it's discovering it by searching for it, search engine pages, SERP pages were the mode. Now, and SERP pages are relinquished by putting AI on top of their search engine events, they are literally creating a cohabitation space. Mainly because all the platforms that are doing that are putting in their own long language models on their own sites so that you become loyal and comfortable and familiar with them and use them in preference to another, just like why you use Google compared to Bing. The race of Google's dominance as a search engine way back when in the late 90s to the early 2000s was literally in the same modality what kicked up Prodigy and everybody else that was Yahoo and everybody else was because Google got people, they gave good answers, people got comfortable using them, and they just kept persistent with it, and they stopped and slowly stopped using Yahoo and Prodigy and anything else. Um, because Google was their familiar place to go to, and it provided what they were looking for. That war is going on right now between ChatGPT and Copilot and Gemini and Llama, Meta, right now. And Apple's not even in that race right now. We'll see what happens with them. But that's what's happening right now. And we're seeing the effect in our search engine results. We're seeing the loss of monopoly of SEO and SERP. SEO, no, in the sense of search engine optimization, you still, it's not like you say, so let's stop SEO, we're all going to be focused on this. No, you need to incorporate what AIO is, or you want to call it GEO or whatever, into your strategy. The two key elements of that is you have to begin to first measure what's happening. In order to affect anything, you have to have measurability. So look into measurability. You join the Hospitality Marketing Club. We talk all about the measurability tools. We're knee deep and neck deep into the whole back and forth of which one's which and who's what and how to finite the searches and everything else. It's a fascinating conversation, and out of respect for those that share that kind of information conversation with me, I don't throw this out into the show where but join us. Join us. Go to hospitalitymarketing.club, sign up, put your email in, confirm that you're a hospitality marketer. Boom, get in the middle of conversations. It's pretty cool stuff. Anyways, we have to begin to incorporate the measurability of what AI is. And then secondly, once we have the ability to understand the measurements of it and so forth, and its contributions and trackabilities and so forth, how do you influence the value of AI to you where you become part of the solution? Because that's the key element and the key answer to this whole process is it's one thing to watch the train wreck. It's another thing to control not having it wreck. And to know what to do if it did wreck, which it is doing, it's changing the SEO spectrum now. What do you do with it now that it's changed? How do you do what you do? And how can you become better at being that solution? Because now, as with anything, with search engine pages, it used to be organic solutions. Then it was, oh no, paid solutions, organic solutions. Then it was, oh no, third panel over here. Here's Meta and other things that you can try ad out, and ad spaces back in the day. And now it's ads on top and organics down below. Now we have an answer box, and now we have AI above answer box. We're getting pushed down. So we're all wanting to be in that narrow scape of, rather than being one of several options in the accumulation of information, okay, it's getting to, I want to be a part of the solution or the answer. So it's being able to be at the top of the mountain when it comes to what you can be referred to from long language models, AI, and what people use it for. It's going to get more, it's going to get easier. Kind of goes back to what I was babbling about with the smart glasses. I'm not a huge Llama fan, but I am a huge convenience fan when it came to these glasses, where when I was traveling, it translates the languages for me audibly and visually. Told me what I was looking at, gave me recommendations based on how I asked the question about which restaurant I was looking at, what's the feature on the menu, what is this piece of art, what is that building, the interactive capability of talking to the AI, but being educated on how to talk to the AI. Just like we were educated in search engine results, how to ask the question in the query box. How you define the question is a lot of how you get the results. So we got better and better, and we started getting longer and longer terms. At first, it was 1, 2, 3, 4 words, and then it's turned into long strings. AI is a lot like that. We're going through this. I ask a simple question, but the answer's not as clear as I wanted it to be. So I have to ask a better question. And you eventually begin to learn, like I did with the smart glasses, instead of saying, what building am I looking at? You have to qualify and say, based on my location, what is the history of the building and its name that I'm looking at? It snaps the pictures, looks, knows where you are, and then we'll have a much better answer than if I say, hey, Meta, what am I looking at? It says, you're looking at an architecture building built, looks like in the late 1890s, blah, 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 blah. That's great, but didn't answer my question. Give me a little information, but it wasn't what I was asking for. I wanted to know what I was looking at. Like, what is this building's relevance? It's a beautiful architecture, whatever. Tell me what the relevance is. So you frame what you're asking for, better and better. The interesting part of it is given that you're giving up your data to do this, is that if the history of how you answer begins to help it know how to answer when you ask a similar question again. We're all learning this together. We're all going through this learning curve together, and it's only going to continue to change as it gets changes in what we're using and how we're using it and so forth. So with that, you have to understand how you have to adapt what you're doing on your site and how you show, okay, to being that answer. Because right now there's not a pay relationship model for AI. There's no, oh, okay, if I spend money on a budget type campaign, then I turn into the answer. To give you back a little bit of the problem issue that's associated with AI, remember when I was talking about the hallucination stuff and how it'll make up stuff, and we know that, and there's a tremendous amount of AI junk on the internet. Well, AI doesn't know what's junk and what's not. They look for the same signals that they're looking for other things, and they may use bad data to come up with an answer. And even though they try to self-purge as to making sure it's accurate because they see it's out there, it's still using bad data in, bad data out. I'll give you a case of how this is true. TripAdvisor can be a good signal for hospitality as to what our hotel is about, what have you. So they may use TripAdvisor for a resource, depending upon its structure of value. And we know that TripAdvisor, I can pay to be number one on a list. So if they go and they see a hotel that's not me as number one, they'll put that in contrast to me. Like, well, on this authoritative site or on this site that we use as an authority base, we use because of its content is what have you, it isn't saying the same thing that we're saying about ourselves. We may be the number one reviewed property for our market. We may say that or whatever, but here over there's a number one position that's not us. Well, we can't change what it looks at TripAdvisor for, and we can't change TripAdvisor unless we want to spend money to be that. So we have to find ways to augment what we're doing so that even with that happening, all the other more accurate true markers still balance out. That's where this problem comes in because AI is looking for comparative valuation. Remember the top 5 things I was talking about? Trust signaling is one of them. It's looking for trust signaling. It's going to learn this better. It's going to learn variables. It's going to create a way to interpret the placements that it sees, knowing that now they're paid positioning rather than true representations and so forth, but not yet. So there is this deluge of muddied data that's out there that can negatively influence us as well. So keep in mind that you are fighting against currents, that you may be doing what is correct and maybe doing what is truthful, and you be doing all the things we're mentioning, but there's forces working against you that can misdirect you from where you're trying to get at because they influence things that you can't influence back. So that's where this maturation of AI is going to be progressing as it learns more and more of how to do what it's doing better to again go to the same solution end. Some of that, well, I think it was show 510. Hold on, looking at my show list actually. It was 510. No. It was even farther back. Show 505, April. We talked about EAT, our EEAT, experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. These are 4 base criteria that are used in the AI process and more, but that's an easy 4, to validate how it's pulling in data, the experience, the expertise, the authoritativeness, and the trustworthiness, similar to what Google does for what they say is their financial and medical ranking sites and so forth and so on. Same type of criteria basis for it. So again, moving pieces, there is no silver bullet, although ironically, we actually, anyways, there is things to do now to improve the impact of being able to influence your AI. So 2 critical elements of it is first, define how you're going to want to measure. There's tools. Second, define how you're going to be able to influence. Those are the 2 actionable items for this from our conversation of searching versus solving. So back in the United States for this. So that's my point of the day. Any comments, suggestions, feedbacks, please, if you're not, I mean, I'll hear about them in the club later on anyway, but if you would like to respond to, if you found something, as I said, challenging out, that if you got a actual item from any of the conference presentations about AI this past week at HITECH and the commercial conference for HSMAI, please tell me what they are, or tell me that they, prove, show that it is. I'd love to understand that there's something good that came out of those kind of buzzword conversations. I know there's a lot of great content at the conference, don't get me wrong. It's just in reference to the AI, it's a lot of point and glimmer and glitz and no solutions, no actionable stuff is how I always look at these kind of buzzword usages. So there you have it. Again, thank you for watching us on simulcast globally. We'll recast the show as always, 11:30 Wednesday mornings, London time for my EU friends that I just left. 11:30 a.m. Wednesday morning, Sydney, Australian time for my APAC friends. And should you have any questions, feedbacks, or comments, or want to do the show, actually, we're going to be having some guest hosts coming up now that I'm back, and it's easier to schedule in similar time zones. You can reach me at Lauren at hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. As always, catch also with our radio station, Hospitality Radio. That's global as well. Our TV station is in 209 countries. Our radio station is in 39 countries. Yes, 39 countries. So globally for it, there's a lot of great linear programming on the radio station. We have other podcasts that are related to our industry outside of my own, as well as commentaries and so forth. It's fun programming on that. And then our TV channel, we have a pay gateway. You go in and there's additional content to hospitality for hospitality industry and so forth you can get to. So with that, my name is Lauren Gray. I thank you for the privilege of your time and look forward to talking to you all next week.